Hello and welcome. This is Sergio Moreau. We're here with Rebel One Live, and we have a great guest today from the Netherlands, Godska. He is founder and general partner of Acrobator Ventures based in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Not right now, but he'll share a little bit more about that, about the COVID and lockdown. But he's still hustling, working with great startups. He has backed Miro, Harvard, and others. And it was great. I met him at the Unleash conference that focuses on accelerating impact investors internationally. He shared some of he blessed us with his time and his wisdom in growth hacking. So I'm excited to dive in. So thank you, Bas, for joining us today.
Great to have you.
Yeah,
Have me.
absolutely. Absolutely. So if you can share a little bit more about your fund, 40 million euro fund based in Europe, Acrobator Ventures.
Thanks. Yeah, it's an operator-led Dutch pre-seed and seed tech fund, but it's operating or focusing mainly on a few of the former Soviet Union kind of CIS countries. So mainly Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, a bit of Kazakhstan. That's our niche. Obviously, considering I'm from Holland, if we see a great deal in Holland, we also do that. So that's what we're doing. We built this on the proven strategy of the first fund, which was more of an angel fund. The company value of those investments has now gone over a billion euros. But obviously, that was the last 10 years. And building on this, people said, hey, why don't you set up a fund and really do this with other people's money? Because that was only with a very select small group, including my own investments. And we focus on the founders from those regions. But if they, for instance, move to the States and they still have their background in Russia or Ukraine, that's still fine for us. So it's the only Western fund with about over 10 years of local presence in the market I was just referring to. We're very diversity driven, and we are, as far as I know, the world's first growth hack VC. So we basically, we really provide hands-on marketing support and access to the West as identifying factors. So I guess we'll get to that a bit later as well, but that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to go dive into the Growth Hacker Center that is Boss's flagship focus. So for you, can you share a little bit more about the startups that you look for and the size of investments that you make?
Yeah, sure. So the initial check we write would be up to 500,000 euros. The smallest we've done is probably about 100,000 euros. The sectors, I'd say that the main sectors, well, it's productivity tools like Miro, it's education tech, it's deep tech, it's some niche marketplaces, SaaS solutions, nothing out of the ordinary. However, we look at it from the growth hack angle. So if it's something that is pretty funky and we can add a lot of practical value, then that is more important than if we see a great business where we can't add more value than just our cash. Then we actually don't even feel excited enough. We just say, okay, why don't you go to a niche expertise? So what we don't do, I'd say, is biotech, crypto, and the third one is IoT. We're not smart enough for hardware.
Not yet.
We're learning maybe, but yeah, actually I did a personal investment actually today in an IoT startup, but I was already involved for a few weeks. So that's the only exception to the rule. But in my last 10 years, the two failures I had in my investments were both IoT companies. So I've learned my lesson, I thought.
I hear you. And so in terms of industry, you shared what you don't focus on. Are there any others that you feel are your expertise? I mean, the growth hacking angle, of course, but are there any other ways, industries or verticals?
Okay, well, the thing is, I've have a background myself for 7 years in online travel. So I was the CMO of lastminute.com and European CMO for orbits.com. So that obviously helped. I'm also founder of the Russian market leader in the tour packages segment, travelata.ru. And so that I have a soft spot for travel, but it's from a fund investment perspective, not main priority, but I always love to spar with founders from that sector as well. Advertising technology, I love, although it's underrepresented in the last 10 years of fund activity, because obviously a lot of the ad tech companies dominate that market anyway. But yeah.
For it, can you speak, since we're on the topic of travel, um, travel industry has, come to a halt now with COVID and the pandemic. Um, since you have taken interest in that space, uh, what what do you see for the space now, and what do startups need to do besides that there's the hibernate and wait, but any other insider advice now, especially during this time?
I think from an investor perspective, probably travel is kind of a fundamentally undervalued spot now, because at the end of the day, when you look at it from a consumer demand, at some point people go crazy in this lockdown. Once we all can breathe the fresh air again, there will be a desire to travel. The behavior will probably be different. We'll have probably longer queues, masks, disinfection in planes, maybe keeping the mid rows between seats open so the prices will go up. Like in Europe, where you fly for 25 euros from the north to the south, that time is probably over, unfortunately, or fortunately for the planet. But so there will be a lot more domestic travel by car, like what you probably, I don't know, in the US, you probably fly a lot, but you also sometimes just take a car for like a few days, or you travel from west to east. I guess in Europe, so being so fragmented, you definitely can find a lot of interesting areas that you normally would overlook. People from the Netherlands will probably drive a few hours to Germany, where they normally would jump in a plane to Spain or something. Yeah, that's something that I assume. I've even seen nice kind of graphs in which you see that kind of, obviously the companies like Miro, those are really kind of anti-cyclical now, growing like crazy. And I was expecting travel to be the completely, utterly battered kind of one in the left bottom of the quadrant. However, through a lot of analyst reports, they say, well, yes, it is being battered, and we can't just say travel sector. You probably need to look at different subsectors, but it is one that will probably climb back fast enough after we kind of get out of lockdown. So it's something to be not bullish about, but probably there's a lot of distressed travel companies where the kind of over going short, or kind of the valuations have dropped horribly. I've seen businesses going from 40 million valuation to 6 million, and I think that's just over punishing the sector. I'm not talking about airline companies, etc., but really kind of online demand generation, aggregators, or other companies that sell travel services. But that's my personal opinion. I cannot predict the future, so.
You can't predict the future. I thought that's what investors do.
Oh yes, sure, yeah. Well, my intuition can, but my fund can't.
Love it, Vas. If I want to go back to you, how did you go from, entrepreneur to growth hacker to, growth hacker consultant to launching your own fund? Can you share a little bit about your journey?
Right. Glad to. Well, firstly, I became a lawyer and studied Russian, but then I thought that was boring, so I emigrated to Australia in 2000. And then I heard about this nice thing called internet. So I thought, wait a second, this is exciting. So I set up my first internet shop in Australia, which went okay, although we had to do everything the hard way. There were no nice out-of-the-box kind of internet shops. We had to build it from scratch, and usability was not really a thing people were so aware of. So it was a painful moment when we invested 100,000 in building a website that a year or 1.5 later, Yahoo came with their SaaS solution, the Yahoo Store, and that was $100 a month. So that actually now also puts it in perspective. If, like we launched an IoT company a few weeks ago, and it's become so easy. Like with you put Shopify, you put some apps in there, and it all works. And so this, to be an entrepreneur in e-commerce now, which is definitely my DNA of the last 20 years, e-commerce, that has become the hurdle it's become so low. So that's almost to be pleasantly jealous of for the new generation of entrepreneurs. But anyway, getting back to the topic. So I moved back to the Netherlands in 2003 and noticed I was ahead of the market for some reason, maybe because English-speaking countries were a bit faster developed, etc., for internet sector. So I was one eye in the land of the blind, and that got me into a nice kind of consulting role and then an executive role at lastminute.com. And then fast forward in 2008, after I set up a well-off consultancy firm, I was headhunted to show in Eastern Europe, in Russia, for heading the local equivalent of Amazon, how to do e-commerce and digital marketing in the West. Obviously, before then, for Orbitz, I managed the 8-9 digit big budget for all of Europe, which was great. Learned a lot from that. So I took all that knowledge to Russia just before the crisis, and with an attractive package. So I arrived there, and I was really the only foreigner dealing with digital marketing in the Russian Moscow space. And I spoke the language a bit. I had to improve it. The business mentality was completely different. So I was all of a sudden as if I landed on the moon, and I was straight away also heading the largest e-commerce company in the country. So I was fairly visible and very attractive for startups to get some advice, because when I started kind of quantifying, I noticed that the market was 5 years behind. Mm-hmm. So like an example, affiliate marketing was not known. So you could really get a lot of benefits from the knowledge you had in that area. And that's when I started kind of mentoring some startups. And fast forward, after also, I left that position at that company, but I became head of a few other top 10, top 5 companies in Russia. Set up my consultancy firm there, an agency, and just as a hobby, started investing since 2011 into startups and co-founded one that became the leader in travel, online tour packages. And basically, I did not really think about investing for the sake of investing. I wanted to be with those cool founders that had great ideas. Mm-hmm. I saw that it could make sense to set something up in those years in Russia. And one simple example, like funds would tell 2 guys from McKinsey, they said, okay, we're going to resign and we want to sell tour packages online. And they went to funds to get funds for raising this. Everybody said, that's impossible. You cannot sell tour packages online. And I'm like, when they came to me, I said, of course, I can help you with that. I believe it's possible. In the Netherlands, everybody buys tour packages online. And that was in 2011. So from a piece of A4, we built this into a company with well over 100 million in revenue and 250,000 paying clients and profitable. And basically that showed me that that obviously took like 6 years or 7 years, but I understood that there was value here, not in just consulting or whatever, to take a bit of equity, invest some of your savings. And that happened in Kazakhstan, that happened in Ukraine, in Russia, and just serendipity with kind of, I received a lot of offers of, to provide assistance, could cherry pick which companies were fun. And that definitely all grew into a nice collection of startups that all grew, and the failure rate was fairly low for some reason, or at least the capital exposure to the failed companies was only 4%. And that got me thinking, because I didn't really notice that all this stuff was growing in the background. I was busy consulting big corporations. And then all of a sudden you see that a guy that you invested $10,000 in 2011, all of a sudden has $220 million revenue. Is the leader, the largest e-commerce holding in Central Asia. And wow. I never could, I have to confess, I did not predict that. I couldn't predict that, but it was just, and it just, yeah, it happened like that. So there is, I still believe, a fair bit of consumer demand and intuition coupled with normal investment savviness that helps a lot.
Yeah, and you were, I love that, because you were able to, whether knowing a little bit of whether you knew it or not, you had seen another market that was more mature, you were in Russia and said that has to come here in some regard, and then taking advantage of that arbitrage. That's great.
I love
Um,
you mentioned the A words because that one is definitely also one of the distinguishing factors. I guess arbitrage is the story of my life. It's always about, I speak 8 languages, you see various cultures, you have that as well. And then you see that there's niches that are underserved. And yeah, that's also one of the corner stones of the new fund, that we take the valuations from from Eastern Europe, which are way lower than in the Valley, and we help those companies to move, make it a Delaware company, set their headquarters for Europe up in Amsterdam, help them to go to the States, and definitely even add sometimes foreigners to the management team. And because it's software businesses, you always get kind of the global markets to be exposed to, and then it doesn't really matter that your R&D remains in Eastern Europe, because that's still out of the 30 top countries in the world, 60%, 30% is from Eastern Europe. If you look at the IT ratings, so
yeah,
that is arbitrage. So like, I'm happy you mentioned that.
yeah, no, that's great. I know when we were at Unleash, the you had taught about growth hacking. Can you talk a little bit? I don't want to steal your thunder. If you can talk about your methodology uh, and what you shared there and what you share with your portfolio.
Yeah, it's funny that growth hacking is now a cool word, but I've been doing what I believe growth hacking for the last 20 years. But what happened is I started noticing a consistency or some sort of thing that every flavor of digital marketing that I applied, or quantification, some of them just kept coming back. It didn't matter what vertical, what business, and of course that's kind of logical. Everybody uses Google, Facebook, etc. So there are elements in the kind of growth hack DNA that are relevant for any business. So when I started at some point calculating the attributed extra value, it was over 2 billion in added value through implementing this methodology. And I understood that the flavors I'm mentioning, that they could be sorted in a nice anagram, I think you call it, cash cow bomber. Ta-da. And this weird word, cash cow bomber, it's really useful for if you have a bit of encyclopedic knowledge of 10 or 20 years of failures, quick wins, what to avoid, what to do, then you can use this. Is it an anagram? Is it a, no, it's like a, I think maybe even acrostichon, I think they call it. But
Yeah.
all those, each word is, each character has one meaning. So I would very quickly say, obviously we can maybe
Yep.
share the formula somewhere. The C is anything context advertising related. The A is anything no cure, no pay, kind of affiliate marketing related.
Hmm.
The S is anything search engine optimization related. And when I say related, I mean that basically in my head and with the team, we have sometimes 10, sometimes 50 smart tasks per direction, that you kind of just go as if it's a pit stop. You check the business as a general practitioner. Does it hurt here? Does that work? We have benchmarks about what the true added value of a particular implementation of a quick win can bring. We can quantify it. So we just look up the kind of encyclopedia of what is there as cures for particular areas or for quick wins. So then the H is human interaction. So that's
Hmm.
cash cow bomber. The H is human interaction, which is a lot of different things. It's being the face of your company instead of just a database with products, or it's about your sourcing team telling a storytelling about a particular product. It could be that you just look a bit better and listen a bit better to the human factor. We've been always used to buy from other people, and now all of a sudden within one generation we're busy with just websites and e-commerce stores. So that still, there's a lot of psychology and elements of relevance. So then the C is I love that one. It's basically commercial creativity. And that is basically exploiting or utilizing your network, making sure you think of out of the box solutions where you implement a white label in a non-competing site to benefit from the traffic. Or I've got a lot of fun stories about that, but probably we won't have time for that. But commercial creativity is basically that stuff that your shower thoughts that you kind of, hey, Why don't we do it like that? Nobody has done it, but we could try. So, and the other part of the C is, of course, CRM, the having proper tools for customer relationship management. Then the O is optimized site usability, which is in a way the orphan of digital marketing. Too many people forget about their landing pages, so we make sure you track all this stuff. You can reduce your customer acquisition costs a lot. And the W stands for web analytics and data, so you make sure that everything is kind of well analyzed, data driven, that you have the numbers. That's the beauty of performance marketing, etc. So I can continue with the second part of the cash cow bomber. I'm not sure how we are with
Yeah, do
time.
it.
Yeah, cool.
No,
Okay.
no, I wanted to, I'm curious before we finish the bumper, if you can share a little bit about the commercial creativity. If you can
Oh yeah.
share a little.
Okay. Commercial creativity has a lot of elements, sometimes of luck. But for instance, with lastminute.com, we at some point had our database with all these wonderful hotels, flights, whatever. We're talking 2003, maybe 2004. And then you have this kind of equivalent of what is it, Walmart or Target, I don't know, like Tesco. So Tesco has many, many millions of visitors visiting their online site for some online grocery shopping. And it's extremely easy to add a little tab in the website saying Tesco Travel powered by lastminute.com. That wasn't done yet before, as far as I know. So basically, we said to them, listen, we will handle it. Our call center will pick up the phone, say, hi, we're Tesco Travel. It's our database. You provide the traffic, and we do revenue share. And this is kind of all of a sudden, within a month, we had £1 million in margin extra just by implementing this and letting people that dial in from a certain number not be picked up as lastminute.com travel, but Tesco travel. So this is no marketing acquisition costs. Of course, you share the revenue, but the risks are lower. So it could be all kinds of things. Another thing that was really fun was that we had in my group of companies I had to manage, the Belgian one, there was a small mistake in IT department, and accidentally we forgot to put the €10 markup on the booking fee. And this was 2004, so there was no kind of kayak or price comparison sites. It wasn't also transparent. And then American Consumer Association started monitoring all sites in the world for tickets and figured out that this weird little Belgian site was the cheapest website in the world for airline tickets. And that went viral in the Chicago Tribune or Washington Post. So there was this offline newspaper article like, hey, if you want to buy your airline tickets cheaply, go to this weird site not weird site, but go to this Belgian site. And we went from, I think, 3 million to 29 million in revenue because of the fact, and my IT department came to me like, Bast, our servers are kind of shaking. And it was all American traffic. There was no Google Translate to figure out, so we quickly adapted the landing pages with English text. So this is kind of commercial creativity, quickly adopting to a changing situation. We made scans of those articles when we finally figured out what the hell was going on, put it on the website for extra trust factors, and that meant that this business, through a mistake in IT, which we obviously gradually fixed, became the cheapest site in the world. And so I could go on, but those are kind of things where you playfully situational marketing is a very good example. You know that sometimes when something is in the news and then a few hours later somebody tweets already a great advertising text about it or something. So those kinds of elements are a lot of fun, and you really need to cherish those kinds of out of the box ideas.
No, thank you for sharing that, because that gives a little creativity to our founders that are in the audience as
Oh,
well,
cool.
as investors. So can you? I would love to hear you want to share Bomber the last part for the audience.
Yeah, definitely. So the B is brand, and brand in itself,
Oh,
say it's a bit of a mix between what I would say like hippie and rocket science, because I've seen complete and huge brand rebranding projects where we really spend hundreds of thousands. But if you in the end would show the difference between the first logo and the second logo, everybody would consider you crazy. that what you paid 200 grand to get from that logo to that logo, but behind the curtains or under the bonnets, there's been in 4 or 5 countries, a lot of focus groups. You all of a sudden figured and understood that the brand triangle inside your organization, consumers had a completely different perception of the brand than the call center who would be dealing with all the problems, etc. And the management, maybe in their ivory tower or not, had a completely other vision. So all of a sudden, only through this kind of catalyst, kind of rebranding research approach, quantitative research and qualitative research, you understood that you have a completely different element or a different business validation or proposition than you think. And then in Europe, with such a fragmented market, the Swiss, they would look more for quality. The British would look more for in-depth information about travel, for instance. The French, although we always thought they were so romantic, were extremely price-driven, etc., etc. So that was interesting that you had to then adjust the taglines per country for the same brand, and that was definitely interesting to see. But I'll move on to the O, which when I developed this formula and it stayed sturdy and reliable for many, many years, it was, you didn't have the word social media yet, so it's online communities. So that's basically anything social media, which obviously has now become very relevant with influencer marketing, etc. But it still fits in this formula that already exists for over 10 years. Then we go to the M, which is a mobile. Obviously, make sure that mobile first or not, that obviously 70% of your traffic may be mobile. Make sure that you do test with some tools how well your site is received on a mobile phone or a tablet. And the other part of the M is meta search, which is not relevant for all verticals, but price comparison sites could be definitely your way of finding qualified leads at a good customer acquisition cost. And then we get to the B of banners. And banners is obviously, especially for startups, is very dangerous. If you buy this on a CPM level, you could go bankrupt pretty quickly if you do not get the right conversions. So always make sure your unit economics are in place. And banners in general, like media assets, making sure you've got the nice 15-second video banners for Instagram, or that you really refresh your banners a lot, that they all have UTM tags. Make sure you measure all this stuff. And if you are a pretty lean startup, then don't straight away go into whole bannering, because it could very well be a bit too early. And obviously in this B of banners, I also add the RTB, the real-time bidding, kind of advanced yield management for real-time bidding. Then the E is email marketing, which is definitely one of the cheapest approaches once you have those databases where you can rent them or share them or be integrated. That's definitely for startups a very good one. So make sure when you launch your company that there is already definitely on the homepage or very visible an opportunity to sign up for email. Some people will say, well, the new generation doesn't use emails. That's all fine. You can look at an email being sent also a little bit as a banner. If it's completely ignored, but every fifth email gets a few seconds of attention from a person, I don't want anybody to spam, but it's sometimes when you are looking for a gift for your cousin and you've ignored 20 newsletters from Amazon, then all of a sudden that day you are looking at it, and it doesn't cost anything for sending that letter to a recipient. So that's the thing with emails. I would say, I haven't finished the whole cash cow bomber, of course, but if you are a lean startup and you have very limited budget, considering your target audience now is founders or your audience, I would say that affiliate marketing, the no cure, no pay approach, and the search engine optimization and email marketing, together with the last character in the cash cow bomber, retargeting, those are 4 pillars that can help you a lot. Obviously, provided that you work well on your usability, that the site does what you want it to do and the customer does what you want them to do. That is probably the most kind of cost-effective, to be prioritized elements of the cash cow bomber. There we are.
Awesome. Well, thank you. No, that was good and very thorough. No, I appreciated that when I heard it from you, and thought it was, especially you come with the years of insight behind each one of those characters that makes your portfolio move forward. So shows other investors that they need to add unique value. I want to shift. I know we only have a few minutes left from you. If you could share a little bit about the European market and what's unique about investing in Europe beyond what you mentioned before about the valuations being different and that arbitrage opportunity? Are there other things that you think are uniquely different in the region?
Actually, those two really cover a lot. So it is a fragmented market. It's harder to access. You see a lot of American investors trying to get their head around how to tackle the European issue. Definitely, here it is a lot about having the local knowledge, but there is a willingness in Europe to look for the jump across the ocean, and there is a mismatch in supply and demand, which I think is a matter of time that it will overcome. Obviously, on Series A level, there's a lot of scouting going on, but the early stage, pre-seed, seed stage, that is undervalued, and that offers a lot of arbitrage potential for kind of operator-led emerging funds like ours. So Europe is definitely, well, there is already the unicorn count is up, the investments are up. Obviously, Corona now we did not really manage to touch, but it's a more risk-averse market in a way. The valuations are more down to earth, sometimes even a bit too down to earth. And founders just love to dream the same way as they love in America. And I assume in America, people have a bit of a better start as they have straight away a huge market. In Europe, you really have to, if you are aiming on the European market, you need to have banners for every little market in different languages, etc. So it really is for experts how to be busy in this market. But obviously, the European markets also serve large other markets outside Europe.
And for investors trying to integrate more deeply into the European ecosystem, what are the areas of opportunity, and how do you advise best to do that?
Well, obviously there's a strong knowledge in AI and machine learning, especially in Eastern Europe. Do make sure that you just don't jump into that market alone. Find local, reliable partners that have the knowledge of the nitty-gritty on the ground. Do not start getting involved in all kinds of unclear legal structures. You do not want to be an investor in some sort of Russian or Ukrainian entity, or if you do not understand even the very reliable Dutch structures. Maybe look for founders that have a keenness to be mobile and let them. A lot of the Russians and Ukrainians set up Delaware C corps, and then straight away a lot of gets clearer. Transfer the IP to the American entity, and then make sure that you assist a lot with getting sales representatives or business development representation in the States or elsewhere, and then enjoy the fact that the rates for development are sometimes up to 75% lower than the valley rates, etc.
Well, no, I before we close and I wanted to dive in, you had mentioned it briefly. You talked about COVID and we'd touching on the impact there. Obviously, it's a tough time for startups across the board. But what do you see being trends or changes coming out of this in creating this new normal? What do you think will go back to back to normal? Like you said, travel will inch back up, but what will fundamentally change, do you think?
Entrepreneurs, the true diehard entrepreneurs that have entrepreneurship in their veins, they have woken up and will feel this wonderful sensation of a cold shower, feeling more invigorated. And this is already proof. We launched a company 3 weeks ago in the IoT sector that was born out of COVID, in a sense, out of the situation. And we are looking very much forward to dissolve this company, because what it does, it has smart distance devices. So when somebody comes closer than 6 foot to a bank employee or in a restaurant, a small lamp turns from green to red. Please keep your distance. And this is to educate everyone in the 6 foot society to get there. And we sold close to 10,000 units in 1 week time with a company that hardly existed a month prior. And we are now actually today starting to sell this. This is not an advertisement, but we're starting to sell this in the United States. But this product itself is really great that even the brother of the Dutch king officially today launched in the factory the first product that went to a customer. So much is the whole Prince Constantine, so much is the whole mentality now to help startups, to help small businesses to survive the crisis. So this cohesion plus the fact that the true fanatic well, commercial creative, let's call it, like situational entrepreneurialism is getting us very strong boost. So there is some positivity in going through those temporary hardships.
Well, thank you, Bas. This was great. And for everyone watching, this was our international rendition. So thank you for giving us light and connecting us a little bit more to the Eastern Europe ecosystem. Bas Godska, he is founder and general partner of Acrobator Ventures. Thank you for joining us on Rebel One Live. For those that are watching Rebel One Live, join us to hear impact investors and innovators. That's what we're focused on. So thank you, Bas, for joining us.
Thank you. Bye, Sergio. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.